Welcome everybody. It is that time of year again. It's Spark animation season. And welcome to this series of chats with directors for 2023's Spark Animation Online. My name is Desirae Witte. I'm also a filmmaker and had the pleasure of participating last year. And today I have the pleasure of chatting with Ethan Barrett, who is joining us. His film is called Rosemary A.D. Welcome to Spark.
Thank you. It's a huge honor to be here online for now, but yeah, I'm very excited to be here. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I'm really excited you're here as well. I got to watch your film. I was just sobbing in the back of the room. It was really moving. So I guess to get started, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? How you came to filmmaking, what it is you do?
Yeah, I grew up on a farm in Kansas, basically. So I grew up very rural. And funny as it sounds, like there's nothing I ever wanted to do other than make movies. So, but I didn't know that was a possibility. So when I got to college, I was going to major in international studies, and because I had spent some time overseas, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I saw some people picking out film books, and when I saw their film books, I asked them what those were all about, and they said they're film majors. And as soon as I found out you could be a film major, I just picked that up. So I did film school, double majored, to make the parents happy, international studies and film. And from there, I moved to LA, and I was working on a lot of TV shows as a sort of a writer's assistant. And I found myself working on a project. I found myself working towards a goal that I didn't necessarily want. So my wife and I moved out to Austin, Texas, where I could focus kind of on my own projects more, maybe have a little more freedom. So that's kind of what I've been doing since for the last couple of years. Then the pandemic hit, and I had a lot more time on my hands all of a sudden. So.
Yeah, so can you, that might honestly lead in, was it the pandemic that hit that kind of prompted you to make a film, or had you been making films, prior to that?
Yeah, I had made a few stop motion animated films, and there were a couple of times where I had done a few things hand drawn, but not very long, not anything major. But there's one time I did a sort of a segment of a short that had crayons. I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. And so I think, this something snapped in my brain. So I just decided to go for a full short in crayons, and yeah.
It's truly spectacular, honestly, seeing the whole look of the film. And yeah, so for those who haven't seen the film, like it's a deeply personal story. It centers around depression and this experience of feeling suicidal and kind of that thought process. I've personal experience with this as well, and I'm just curious from your perspective, what made you want to make this film? What was it that kind of made you decide to go for this topic?
Yeah, when our daughter was born, my wife and I decided that she would go to work and I would stay home. And I've struggled with depression myself just for a very, very long time. And I started looking up, I guess half out of curiosity, half, how it always starts. I started looking up what would be the effects of the suicide on my daughter. And I was hopefully in the back of my mind hoping that, oh yeah, positive things could happen, or people just got over it. But then one story that stuck out to me, I just read, maybe it was an internet forum of some kind, that someone whose life was just a series of tragedies after their dad had committed suicide. So I think that started a train of thought. So I kind of wrote that in my diary and left it for a long time. And then, after a couple of months, I opened that page up in the diary again and saw that. And I thought, this might be a good way to work this all out. Yeah, because as it started, I was literally feeling all this, and I thought, maybe this will just be my last thing. Maybe I'll just finish this and be done. Because it didn't always end, it didn't always end the way it did. I had other endings in plan, but I thought, because this is a personal film, this isn't, I'm not trying to be poetic. This is like literally my life. So that's why I ended it the way I did. So.
Oh, there we go. No, I was really, really moved by it. I think For a lot of people, and unless it's something you've gone through, the kind of idea of sort of that bargaining of like, man, all these freaking people around me keeping me tied to this plant, it's it is truly something that goes through your head of like, how is this going to affect my family? And then the way you were kind of able to explore it was really amazing. But you explored so through comedy and crayons. And I think that was something really, really fantastic. It really resonated with me. Could you tell us a little bit about, why comedy? And then you mentioned kind of how you got into the crayon animation. How did that tie into, the choice to do it in this way?
Yeah. I think in the back of my mind, no matter what, if I tell someone asks me, what's the short about? And I say, oh, it's about me thinking about suicide, they're just going to turn off immediately. I think you have to have some kind of levity in it. You have to draw people in with a comedy, because if you start off right away with, it can turn people off. It can be heavy, and it's sometimes even hard to describe what the short is. But it's also just the way my mind works a lot of the time. It's just comedy. Maybe people, there's a reason like a lot of comedians say they struggle with depression, because it's probably just a way to cope, and it's a way to enjoy your day-to-day life in every situation. No matter how dark, you can kind of see the humor in it, because it comes from a lot of self-awareness, maybe too much self-awareness at sometimes, because you feel a situation and then you feel depressed about it at the same time. And then you start thinking the irony about how you're aware you're depressed. So if you're aware about it, why would you be depressed? Why couldn't you just like choose to be happy if you know? And then, so it's like overactive mind, I guess.
Yeah, totally relatable. There's a lot of funny stuff that emerges when you're mentally ill. It's sad and weird and true. So I always, you really do. Yeah. And it's a way to, as you said, kind of help to share that message with someone else who might be more uncomfortable or trepidatious, or just kind of not familiar with being able to talk about that kind of stuff really plainly. That's something else that your film does, I thought, really well. And sort of, I think it contributes to the comedy, but also just around that discussion of just being honest and just saying it. You really talk about these dark thoughts and these difficult things really plainly, without euphemism. And so was that sort of like a conscious sort of like, I really want to just be blunt about this, I don't want to kind of sugarcoat it, or was it more from the comedy perspective? Or
yeah, I told myself, and I had to keep telling myself as I was making this film. That's really astute, by the way. Yeah, that's a really great question. I told myself I'm not going to philosophize at all. I'm going to just, everything will be completely bare bone. And so anytime I found myself philosophizing or writing something, I didn't mention the word depression or anything like that. I just tried to make everything completely bare bones. And in a way I think that was good, because it took the feelings, it took the story off of me and put it sort of like, I'm trying to celebrate my daughter's life, over just like going into my own issues, my own problems. Because I think we all kind of want to do that as artists, and it's tempting, but sometimes it's brevity, just like little pieces. And I think maybe with the vagueness, maybe people can relate more in some ways. But the only time I did philosophize, I admit, was there's a line about like wondering if she loves me, because I don't know if I'm capable of love myself. And I think, because sometimes I think, does she truly love me? Or does she just love me because I'm caring for her? It's just, it's an interesting relationship when you have with just a 6-day-old newborn that can't express themselves.
Yeah, I don't have kids yet myself, but I do have a dog, and it goes through my head all the time. It's like, I love you, but absolutely. I don't know. Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah, something I wondered as well, like obviously making a film is a big endeavor, and making something so deeply personal adds a layer to that, where you sort of, as much as you want to maybe stay detached from the project to get it done, it's still production, it's still something you're trying to create. How did did it being such a personal kind of story ever sort of kind of get in your way of actually making the thing?
That's a really good question too. Yeah, that's a very good question. I think, as I was making it, it felt so personal. I didn't think people would care, to be honest, because I didn't think people would be interested in, my own personal problems. So I just thought, since I was kind of throwing caution to the wind and just saying, I'm just going to make what I would want to see, and truly not knowing if people would care or not, because yeah, and that's just kind of the way I made it. So I thought, I won't hold anything back on a personal level, because I feel like I've made films in the past that weren't that personal, or I could have, gone deeper. So I think I was just really learning to like really dig up, sort of my own pain, and just to put it out there. Yeah. See what happened.
Yeah, it almost sounds like it was like a way of processing kind of that experience for you,
Yeah.
therapeutic in a way, maybe.
Very therapeutic. Yes. Yes. And it was all done in between, diaper changings and bottle feedings. I might get a hour or two of work in, and then all of a sudden I hear the baby cry, and I have to stop. So in a way, it was good as an animated project. So
Yeah. So, just to jump back over to the production side of things. So crayons, how many crayons did you go through in this thing?
Oh, that's a good question too. I think I had a number. I would get sort of the bulk packages of the simple colors, but then sometimes you get there's some like burnt sienna colors like that, because you get tired of using brown, you get tired of using orange. So I think I had maybe 5 or 6 of the 64 packs that had sort of the vague colors, but you have to be careful getting too addicted to the creative colors, because they're not always in every 64 pack, and you can't spend like $3 just for one crayon just because it has the plum in the 64 pack. So you just have to be careful with what you use. So, and I didn't know how much it would matter in the end product. So yeah.
I love that, because it's problems you don't have unless you're making an animated short with crayons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Crayola like industry was propped up that year by school
They
children
did.
and Ethan.
I'm sure there's a board meeting somewhere where they're like, what's this bump right here? I don't know.
It's like, oh, and then, a year later, this film comes out. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I should have got them to sponsor it maybe.
Maybe now.
Yeah.
Maybe now.
Yeah.
No, that's really neat. And so you had done animation prior, but you were originally a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Live action or?
Yeah, I'm used to doing live action film. I've done like a couple like very small stop motion shorts, and then I think my biggest one was 2 or 3 years ago. And then I've done a few, but this was my first actually hand drawn animation. And in a way, crayons was kind of an excuse, but also it's very inefficient because if you make a mistake, you just have to scrap it and start again. Yeah, you can't erase. But yeah, so there's a lot of differences between live action animation, obviously, but yeah, this was a great learning experience for sure.
Well, and I mean, there's a reason why there's coloring books in like therapist's office. So like,
yes,
really sounds like it. Yeah, it was something that you could kind of just like focus away on. Yeah.
Yeah, you can really just hone in and like sit in silence, listen to music as you just fill in the colors. Sometimes, yeah, if you just need to sort of shut your brain off and go for it in a lot of those scenes with lots of colors to fill in. Yeah.
And the way the film plays out too, it plays very sort of like intuitively, like almost. So I was curious sort of about your process. Was there some writing that happened? Was this something you did straight ahead? How did you construct the film?
I think I started doing it straight ahead for a little bit. Then I realized this isn't going to work. This is completely inefficient. This is a really bad way of doing this. And even this is just how little I knew, that I start off drawing the background and the foreground together. And that just shows like how little I know about animation, that I just realized this is not going to work. And I probably, in the movie, it kind of works out pretty nicely how there's 3 situations. I think I had about 5 or 6 at first. And then I realized like 3 is like such a perfect round number. So I kind of combined the happy ones into one, and then the sad one. And then I realized, you know what, it's kind of grandiose for me to imagine that my suicide would have a lifelong impact on her. So the third scenario, I didn't even have planned at the beginning at all. So after doing that, I admit I never storyboarded, but I did do a pretty elaborate shot list where everything was pretty planned out. Because since I'm making it all myself, I don't need to show anyone. I just need to know exactly what I need to put in there. Yeah.
I think it was a good instinct. It was, even watching it, I think there's something about suffering that really makes us turn inward and sort of imagine, like, there is a bit of an ego situation about it. And watching that film, the first two, I was like, yeah, totally. And then the third one was really poignant, of this thought of like, yeah, maybe it won't have this huge impact. And I thought it was a really beautiful and interesting kind of juxtaposition. Yeah, I know. So how old is Rosemary? She's still a baby.
She was a really little one when I made this. She's almost 2 now. She has her birthday in November. So
happy birthday, Rosemary.
Yeah. The star. Yeah. And if I'm honest, that third scenario is the most likely. Because, we can't imagine ourselves to be the center, the focal point of the world. My wife's a very strong person, and Rosemary, all signs show that she's a very strong person as well. And yeah.
I think signs also show that you are a pretty strong person as well. Out of curiosity, have you ever thought about whether you might want to show this to Rosemary someday, and what that conversation might look like?
Oh yeah, I think long before she was born, I knew, like, I'll always be honest with her about mental health and with depression. And so, because I can't expect her to be honest about her feelings unless she sees me do the same. So I'll definitely show her, because I mean, her voice is in it. It's only fair, and yeah, I'll always be honest, because, I hope she can be honest with me. And so I think that starts with me being honest with her, and to know that mental health is something you can talk about. And I think, I'm very hopeful for the next generation. I think,
honestly, it's something that, as much as, our generation is doing better, we're still coming from parents that really struggled, and a lot of them are still struggling. And I think you're right. And I actually really think that this film, in its sort of bluntness and openness and just saying it and putting it out there, I think it really gives other people an opportunity to maybe be taken aback at first, but then just also understand that, yeah, it's thoughts. It's what happens when you're in this state and in this situation. And we need to be able to say it plainly, and laugh a little bit about it too, because it is freaking heavy, and it is hard. And sometimes you do just want to laugh at,
you need that catharsis. Yeah, sometimes you have to. Yeah.
So you'd mentioned earlier that you'd initially had kind of plans for different endings. Were they initially a bit more tough or dark, or it really does end on a more hopeful note? And can you talk a little bit about that, and how you decided how to?
Well, yeah, there's definitely times when I was working on this short that I thought, maybe this short will kind of be like my swan song in life. And that whole end segment about doing the work, going to therapy, going outside, it wasn't the original ending. The original ending I kind of had planned was that, Rosemary walked to the grave and, like, look at, see my grave, then look up, and then, see herself playing with Dad. And then it would kind of end right there, sort of on an ambiguous note. And I thought that would be such a beautiful, perfect, ambiguous ending. And then as I kind of thought about it, and I even say it in the film, this isn't a poem, this is real life, and how's Rosemary gonna feel, someday if she sees that film and just sees it ending like that, like fully realizing her pain, but not taking the steps necessary to stay in her life. So, and the responsibility, and like ending that way would have put it on her. But I wanted the film to end saying, like, the work is mine to do, not yours. So.
Yeah. And I wanted to say, as an audience member, you know, you talk about it being kind of for her. I appreciate that you ended it that way for me as an audience member who's been
Yeah.
through, similar things. I think it's a beautiful way to look at things, especially when we're making art about this stuff, is we do have a responsibility to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really moved. Like as soon as that, I don't want to spoil it for people who, haven't seen it yet, but as
Spoiler
soon
alert. Yeah.
as there is sort of a shift towards the end, and as soon as that shift happened, like that was the thing that sort of like really connected with me as an audience member. Because, one of the main symptoms of depression and of struggling with this kind of stuff is hopelessness, right? That is just like
Absolutely.
one of the things that you Google and it is
Hmm.
there. And so to insert that sort of the hope, it's not something sort of easily tangible and when you're stuck in it, when you're in the murk. So to kind of feel seen by somebody who's been through it and who could express it in this way, make you laugh, and then say, but we're gonna be fine, I think is a really powerful way to do that. And yeah, so just really kudos and yeah, amazing work.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're the same, but to me, happy ending is not always my default. I don't, like I said, it's not always the way you feel like, is this corny? I don't know, but it felt right, because this is real life thing. Um, a lot of us grew up on movies that maybe some of our favorite movies end on pretty dour notes, and we love them. And for me, some of the endings that resonated were, what's the one that's in the Searchers ending, where it's sort of the lonely man walks off into the sunset, and we just applaud because this is how it should be. He should be off alone by himself. But that's not the ending that I want for myself or for the audience. I want the audience to know that's not what they should do.
Yeah,
Maybe it's cool for John Wayne, but
because honestly, like darkness is sexy. I think there's something in
it
our
is. Yeah. Yeah.
egos that we just want to be like the hot young dead person, I guess. Like, but you're right. Like that's not in real life. Like there really isn't. It's not as romantic as it sounds. And I didn't think it was corny at all. It was
Well, thank you.
impactful, just for the record.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Noted.
Yeah. No, a really amazing work. Yeah. Before we kind of wrap things up, was there anything sort of throughout the production or any moments that you just kind of dying to share or?
A lot of this film was really special because I recorded all the sounds myself too. And I had to bring Rosemary on along to all that. So she was not even 1 year old. She was 6 months through a lot of it, 8 months. And I do recall what I took her when you hear the sounds of rushing water. So I remember I took her to a creek and, kind of had her in a little swimsuit and just let it set her down in the water. And, there's so like this film created a lot of special moments between me and her. So.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for, both for making this amazing piece and for sharing with us today and being vulnerable. And yeah, it was just a joy to talk to you about this. What are you focused on now after the film? Are you going to take it easy for a bit? Any plans for future cartoons?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually storyboarding another short. That should be pretty cool. I'm working on that now. It's written, and so I'm doing prep this time for it. So hopefully that should work out, and that'll also be hand drawn. Sort of going into the basic thesis of the film is that I'm trying to answer the question like, what is the purpose to live? Like, why should you live? So nothing big.
Just just the meaning of life is just a little things.
Existentialism. Yeah.
That's amazing, dude. Where can we find you online for those who are, eager to keep an eye on your next project?
Yeah, a good way is just to look at my website, which is spacedogfilm.com. All of my past shorts are on there, as well as Rosemary A.D. And I try to keep updates on there on what the next project will be.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Ethan. This was just such a pleasure. And
Yeah, thank you.
Everybody definitely, get those passes to Spark. You don't want to miss Ethan's film, and there's some really amazing things in the lineup. So once again, thank you so much, and talk to you again.